explain to us that there is an equipment component of the funding to Hub Phase 3, and he's going to discuss how we plan to use that equipment to benefit the community.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Unfortunately, no science yet is probably the tagline for this. So basically, the idea is that within Catalysis Hub Phase 3, we were allocated funding for strategic equipment. And the idea would be then hopefully in a few years' time, once that money is spent, we'll come back here again and hear about the new science that is enabled. So in the Catalysis Hub bid for funding, earlier this year that was granted, and hence the reason why we're here today, at least in part, we allocated 800,000 of 2 million that we were allocated to set up what is shown here as a Raman Centre of Excellence. And this is something we're doing in collaboration with Central Laser Facility. So some of this is basic equipment that we're going to buy, which is the flagship bit is this thing called the Opt-IR, which is able to do Raman spectroscopy and infrared spectroscopy from the same point. So of course, normally you could do infrared microscopy or Raman microscopy, but you wouldn't be able to do them together. And the other thing is that this can reach spatial resolutions that are going to be typically below what would be the optical limit. So we will be able to do that with both infrared and Raman microscopy. So you will be able to kind of map two sets of data together on the same from the same spot in the sample. There will be an in situ cell that will allow you to do catalysis. So you could do operando with this. So this is the major bit of kit, and the other two bits of kit that will run alongside that will be two fiber optic probes with the option of either running at 785 or 532 to do either solid gas catalysis, time resolved, so you've got sort of time resolved spectroscopy here, or for example liquid phase, so we've got batch reactor here for doing homogeneous or liquid phase catalysis. So that's the core bits of kit that we wish to purchase in this first phase, but in addition to that we have some existing kit. Sorry, the formatting has gone a little bit AWOL here at my control. Sorry, I'm not responsible. So basically with the CLF are basically making available some of their own capability. So we have this Renishaw Invia microscope, and there's some other kit that we've had lying around that we couldn't use because it's a class 4 laser, and therefore we need an interlock system with it. So we will install equipment within two effectively enclosures that will be interlocked. So that will mean that not only will we be able to do these types of experiments with 785 or 532, but actually this other Raman spectrometer can actually work at 830. So if you've got samples that are particularly fluorescent, having that span of wavelengths will mean that we're more likely, with the range of samples that the community has, be able to collect data from them, fingers crossed. So one of the other key things about Catalysis Hub is that this equipment will be housed in the research complex, and as I'm sure a lot of you already know, the equipment that's there already is accessible to the community. It's very simply a question of sending typically Ollie or myself or Josie, Corinne an email asking us some questions about what it is that you'd like to do and whether, you know, what is the mechanism for accessing that equipment. And we are in the process of setting up, or Ollie's in the process of setting up, an online form, and that will go straight to him with inquiries that you might have about doing experiments that not only involve essentially part of what will be the Raman Centre of Excellence, but eventually we'll have every bit of capability that we have within our labs. I mean, the website already lists these anyway, so you can already send Ollie an email, but to streamline this process, there will be a portal where people can send emails to make inquiries and to make arrangements to come and use the equipment. So that's what we've currently already committed. But as I mentioned before, we were given £2 million for Catalysis Hub strategic equipment, and now we're in the phase of community consultation, so with you all, with a view to spending the remaining 1.2 million. So I've got here essentially a timeline of this process. So already we have a expression of interest call open, so you can go to the website. There will be a link that will be shown later, but actually I hope you're already aware about this, because over the course of the last day, periodically you will have seen an information slide which already tells you that this call is open. So this is just to kind of outline again the core elements of the process. So in the first instance, we open the call, which will then close at the end of September. For those people who've submitted an expression of interest, the idea would be that by the 30th of November, you would have been notified whether or not we would like to take your bid forward. And I do say why we would like to take that bid forward, because we feel this is something we need to do in collaboration. So the idea would be, if you're interested in bidding for this equipment, you submit an expression of interest, and then we work with you to, effectively formalize that bid into something that we think then becomes an additional community facility. One of the key things is that we've got a strict spend profile. We've effectively got to complete invoicing by the end of March 2027. So of course, I'm sure we're all familiar with sometimes that these processes within universities can take time, not just the universities, but also getting instrument suppliers to quote and commit to delivering this capability by the time that we've got to complete invoicing. So that's the only thing, that although we've got 7 years of funding for Catalysis Hub Phase 3, this £2 million has to be spent by the end of March 2027. So in essence, we're basically saying it's effectively a 2-page pro forma, but effectively it's an online form that you have to fill in. And the key things that we're looking for is just basic information on what you'd like to do in terms of the equipment and its capability, where it will be located. As all of the hub in the research complex is free, let's say at the point of access, so in other words, we don't charge people to come here and use the equipment, we would expect to do something similar, and also then to sort of show why this becomes a community facility. So it's not intended for people to effectively say, well, I've got a piece of kit I use a lot, and therefore I like another piece of kit that I'd like to use a lot, and occasionally people can come and use it as well. Of course, there's understanding that the people who are, if you are running a service or you're offering this piece of kit, you'll be an expert in it, and of course you will use it and learn how to use it efficiently so that you pass on that information to the community. But that is a key element to this proposal, is that you would need to kind of demonstrate that there is a community interest in this. And other things, of course, would be like, how would it be managed, so that over the course of the Catalysis Hub Phase 3, this is something that is available to the community throughout its lifetime. And at things like added value, I'll come to in a minute. And then finally, of course, when would this all be delivered, particularly bearing in mind this challenge of final invoicing by the end of March. And on the right-hand side here, we've just got basically an outline of the criteria that we'll assess the proposals against. I was going to click actually on this web page link, but I think considering how the equipment is performing today, I probably won't do it. I won't take the risk. But that's just to sort of show you that the call is live. So you could go there hopefully at the end of today or at some point in the coming weeks to sort of start thinking how you could put together as a community these proposals. I'd just like to draw your attention to a couple of the other points. That all this information is on the web page, so all I'm just doing now is highlighting some key points. So firstly, both theory and experimental capability is in scope. Ideally, we don't have any preconceptions as to what this piece of kit might be. As you've seen in the first example of what we put into the bid, we're going to purchase multiple bits of kit. to enable us to create this Raman Centre of Excellence. So this is still true now. I think another key thing is that in agreement with what we put in the proposal and in agreement with EPSRC, if the equipment is to be located on a campus like here, effectively it comes at 100% FEC for the purchase. However, if it goes into a university or HEI, so higher education institute, the equipment is only then financed at 80%. So if a university, if you want to bid for this as a university, then you have to basically find the missing 20%. So you'll need an institutional commitment. Of course, you know, that would be kind of good, because obviously that will mean that we will have some more resource to spread more widely if there's interest from universities to do this. But the key thing is that this should be operated at zero cost recovery for basic measurements and experiments. So obviously what we're asking is, if you want to put this in a higher education institute, you're going to need that additional 20% cost. And obviously, because invoicing has to be complete by the end of March 2027, it can't be operated with cost recovery. The last bit that's actually missing from the display is basically saying that we need to think about the landscape. So obviously there will be certain bits of kit, you know, it might be kind of good to sort of show that there's community engagement for a particular piece of equipment that might be regional, for example. So the strategic equipment is also supposed to then leverage some additional benefits. So as you can see with the Raman Centre of Excellence, we've managed to sort of bring in not just the new capability, but take advantage of what's there already. So that's going to also be consideration that you need to think about when putting in the bid. Like, you know, why your particular institution, or why this particular piece of kit in a particular location. And that's, so just bear in mind what else is out there, which, you know, when it comes to us evaluating, might have an influence on a final decision. The good news is that I'm not going to go through this, especially since, you know, we have actually been largely on time, but we are just coming up to the coffee break. But I just want to show you that in the end, the form shouldn't be too onerous. So when you look here, it's really, rather than, it's 2 pages, I think, in total in text, but actually it's really very much a box filling exercise. And we've actually got criteria listed on each of the boxes with a word count, an indicative word count. So hopefully this should all be fairly straightforward. Again, I'm not just sort of showing you again for completeness the entirety of what we're looking for. It's basically all outlined in the previous slides. And I think the most important thing is if you have any queries about what it is that we're trying to do here, or if there's something that's not clear, you can reach out to us, but there is still time at this moment, and I can take questions if something that I've already told you is not clear. So the floor is open. Straight away, I didn't really expect anyone.
One question, if I may. So when people come to use the facility, I guess, although you couldn't charge for effectively depreciation of the equipment, I guess you'd be able to charge for running costs.
So essentially, we don't charge for running costs here at Harwell. So we wouldn't expect the community to charge running costs where possible, I think is fair to say. I think what's going to happen is, we know that some people, when they've come up to us and asked us about, can we charge basic costs for doing some basic measurements? Yeah, my feeling would be no. Okay. But I think, you know, the reality is, if in the proposal, if you say that I need to do this, or an organisation needs to do it, then obviously it will be assessed against the criteria. So it would obviously not meet the criteria.
Like to see universities supporting that.
Yes.
You just see it really clear on this. The answer to that is no. So if somebody wants to do something very specialist requiring a very expensive gas, they would have to pay for it. No. The principle of making this a charge out SRF, no. So we've had a question online. I think it's similar but slightly different. Guidance states equipment should be operated at zero cost recovery for basic measurements and experiments.
can equipment sustainability in terms of maintenance and repair in the long term be ensured by charging industrial users for routine, i.e. commercial non-research use for a limited amount of the project timeframe, e.g. 10%?
Yeah, my feeling is that sounds like that's a leverage opportunity there. So for me, I would say that would be in scope. I guess the one key thing is going to be ensuring that the users, the academic users in the Catalysis hub, are not then disadvantaged. So as long as they're not competing against industrial time, which is obviously going to be more beneficial, let's say, as far as cost recovery is concerned, I think if you can tension that, then I think that seems like a good way to kind of demonstrate leverage and obviously sustainability in the long term.
I do have another question online, but I wanted to give the room a chance. Oh.
I had a similar question to
Okay. So the question online is, can investigators from multiple institutions be included in a single application? And the answer to that is yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah. So effectively, underlining all of this equipment bid is basically the hub ethos, which has always been to kind of support multi-institutional, multidisciplinary activities, and this also holds true here.
And there's a question: can they include letters of support at the EOI stage?
No,
and I'd say we don't need them.
We don't need them, but I guess if people have got something that says, like, we really think this is a great idea, it's not something that it's just we don't have, the form is not set up to take them. But I guess maybe if they send an email, then it's useful to have that, but it's not essential.
Might just be worth reminding that the grant is 7 years. So the grant is for 7 years. So the cost recovery issue is for 7 years.
Yeah.
Are you looking to use all of the 1.2 million for a single proposal, or are you expecting that to be spread across 2, 3, 4 proposals?
Yeah, so I think really it's going to be down to the case made. Talking with various members of the community, there's been expressions of interest for perhaps, small tranches of funding for small bits of, well, it's still going to be strategic equipment, but it's not taking all of the 1.2 million. But if there's a compelling case made for spending 1.2 million on one particular piece of kit, well, that's something that we're not against.
Thank you.
Good. I'm not really, no one online. People, I say, feel free to reach out via the following email addresses for any more questions you might have. I'm going to be hanging around for the rest of the, oh, hang on. All right. I'm going to be hanging around for the rest of the conference. So Josie, so feel free, particularly as we've got coffee break coming up, if there's something you wanted to ask on the QT rather than in the public domain, that's also fine. I'm quite happy to take those kind of questions. And meanwhile, seems like a reasonable time to go for a coffee break.